How we doing, nerds? It's Valentine's Day. And of course, on a day that is all about love and relationships and predominantly the colors red and pink, I'm going to get purple. Uh, I'll explain in a little bit. I also I'm going to drink this too because you have to enjoy it by today. It's Stones enjoyed by 21417. It's an IPA with chocolate and coffee. And at 9.4% alcohol, it's not going to keep me up. It's probably going to knock me down. But I digress. Cheers. Let's chat. Couple things happened in the past couple of days that rocked my world a little bit, and figured I'd share. One of my favorite artists of all time is the late great Prince. His classic catalog returned to most streaming services. Like since 2015, it had been on Tidal. If you had been involved with Tidal, you didn't really get the feeling of missing him because his streaming stuff was always there. As for the reason that is, you could probably do a Google search. In fact, I'm pretty sure Pitchfork.com has done extensive coverage of Prince's wars with the internet and streaming and the music industry in general, because the man in his life did some fighting, and he also made some phenomenal music. Anyway, so not everything is there, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because once he changed his name to the Symbol, and we went through the artist formerly known as Prince era. As big of a fan as I am of the man's music, I eventually sort of fell off because it became really difficult to just sort of keep track of, as well as, unless you were super dialed in to the internet at the time, and this is like the early mid 90s, and the internet didn't really have the constant presence in our life till well after the year 2000. At least not in mine. Maybe it did in yours. Whatever. It was never there for me at that time. So I fell off shortly after. Quick omissions in the lineup are, for me at least, like I really liked Musicology, which was deemed as his return album. Musicology is a great album. It actually sort of cements. It came coming out in 2003 or 2000, actually 2004, 2005. Came out after he did the Super Bowl halftime show performance, after he had performed at George Harrison's memorial, and actually he absolutely shredded "While My Guitar Gently Weeps" by the Beatles. And in a way, that particular performance made me like that song, because I really didn't like it before. Also, The Gold Experience, which was an album that kind of brought me back to Prince in a good way, even though like at the time I really hadn't been gone for that long, but I'm like, it was one of those things that showed up. I was actually growing up in Iowa. There was this club that catered to under 18 teenagers. I believe it was either called Energy or Stars or something like that. It was something dumb. I know it's probably still there as some other name. It's probably been renamed several times in the years that I've been in Philly. Anyway, I heard P Control at the club, and I was like, I know this is Prince, but I've never heard this before. And you see all these dumb white girls out in the club going, pussy control, because that's what you do. And I didn't care about any of that. I was just like, wow, this is a Prince song I've never heard, so I have to immediately try and find this. It took me years to find, just because working at Best Buy, they didn't carry a lot of his music anymore. And I think they had plenty of copies of like the album Come from 1994, which is not among his worst albums, but it's just like, I don't need that. But no, that's not on there either, and that's a fantastic album. because it has not only that song, but it also has the most beautiful girl in the world, which is if you've not heard that, you should, like, put me on pause, go listen to it, come back, and all right, you good? Okay, we're good. I'll continue. I actually think 3121, his album After Musicology, is really good. And then, he sort of retreated because it was just really hard to follow his music. I mean, even up until he died. Like, he released an album, Artificial Age, that I still have not listened to, and I think it came out in I think it came out 2015, 2014, but I have not listened to it. And there's a mountain of music that man put out that I've not listened to, just because he has a lot. I mean, for basically close to 40 years, the guy didn't stop working. So he's like, the Wu-Tang Clan or the Rolling Stones or Bob Dylan, where they probably have a vault of material that he has shelved or put away or said, this is just me working through stuff rather than I want to say this on record. But along with this news, we also got word of a remaster of his most popular album. Some have called it his magnum opus, Purple Rain, the soundtrack to the movie, which is actually an okay movie, in my opinion. But that is a phenomenal album, and the album does not need the movie, and the movie does not need the album. They both they fit together, but they hang on their own. And if you've not heard Purple Rain, again, pause it now, go listen, and come back, because it was, when I actually sat down and listened to that, being a relatively young kid, it changed my life in a way that I did not. I mean, I probably still can't understand. Maybe that was the beginning of me becoming super weird, because I grew up in white bread suburbia, and I was listening to soul music predominantly, and hip hop, and Prince, and most of my friends were like, "Why don't you like Metallica or Guns N' Roses?" Or I knew a lot of Warrant fans. That was real weird. And Motley Crue was another big one. It's just, I'm not saying they're bad, it's just not my thing. Like Metallica, I have an appreciation for, just because I do like me some metal. Metal's a good time. It is, like, Slayer's really cool, Iron Maiden's really cool, but that's not what this is about. Also, getting back to the whole vault idea, Prince has 2 albums of unreleased material coming out later this year. I'm always weary about that, because are they releasing it just to release it, or are they releasing it because there's something there? Now, there have been plenty of artists with huge back catalogs and lots of demos and outtakes that have been handled really well. If you're following Bob Dylan's Basement Tape series, they do that man justice in a way of saying, rather than just looking at the outtakes of this album, let's look at the outtakes of this period. Because there were periods of, like, there are series, like Bob Dylan has like series of albums. I don't think Prince's catalog breaks up as nicely, because basically from, like, you could leave For You out of the equation. I don't think it's a bad album, but from Prince's second album, his self-titled album, on through, I mean, I guess you could make an argument on through till he died. I don't really think he was a chameleon of sorts, not like Bowie was, but he definitely said, like, Prince's second album is kind of like a business card. Like, this is me, and everything I do will incorporate this, and to a very consistent degree, his albums never really strayed from that. Certainly, there were messages along the way. There was plenty of sex, plenty of funk, and plenty of really kick-ass guitar playing. And but it's really weird. Like if you go back and just if you actually go, I actually did this on Sunday when the catalog started going live. I actually went and just threw it all on a playlist and hit shuffle. And very rarely do you say, this doesn't sound like Prince. And I think that's a testament to the man. Now, he wasn't like AC/DC or the Ramones where he did the same thing over and over and over. But the sound his sound is so him. And if you can't get down with that, I mean, I'm not going to say you're a bad person, but I don't understand you. So with that, I actually sort of cobbled together a list, and this is all from the streaming stuff. So there's like a frame of reference out there, because I'm not going to ask you to go through searching for whatever weird album I could come up with because I want to be, different than everybody else. I'm going to just say these are probably my 10 favorite Prince albums of what is available on like your Spotify's, your Apple's, I guess Tidal has everything still. I don't know. I don't subscribe to Tidal, mainly because I like Kanye West, but getting a Life of Pablo was not worth a Tidal subscription to me. And then eventually that came to Spotify too. So I'm going to start with 10, go to 1, and I'm going to move on to my final topic, and then I'll let you enjoy. Well, chances are you're not looking at my dumb face on Valentine's Day, but I hope you have a good one. I personally do not like Valentine's Day, and whenever I'm in a relationship, I usually say, hey, and this doesn't matter what time of year we start. I usually like have the Valentine's Day conversation. I say, look, is Valentine's Day a thing? Because we need to talk about this now. So on February 14th, on the nearest February 14th, when I say I'm taking the day off from affection because the entire world is going to be strangling me with it, understand I will do everything else the other 364 days of the year and 365 on leap year. Because I just think Valentine's Day sucks. I just do. And if hate me, I don't care. But happy Valentine's Day. Now, my list, I'll say it for like the 5th time. It's just consistent of what's actually on Spotify at the moment, because that's what I subscribe to. So here goes. Number 10 is actually the Batman soundtrack, the soundtrack to the Michael Keaton or the Tim Burton first Batman movie. This soundtrack is amazing. It was probably like, I think critics were a little wishy-washy with it when it came out, just because it was 1989, 1990. People still hadn't really gotten over Purple Rain. Like there were people like, when's he going to do another Purple Rain? When in the time of this, he had done, Sign of the Times, Parade. He'd done phenomenal work between Purple Rain and the Batman soundtrack, and it didn't stop. I think Trust is a phenomenal song. Party Man's a good song. I really like the Bat Dance, despite that video being really weird and silly to a point, but the soundtrack is really good, and it all operates in that Prince universe that he never ever wanted to escape from, and he was much the better for it. Number 9, Parade. This was sort of beaten into everybody's head in the mid 80s. If you weren't listening to, I guess then they called it R&B radio or urban radio, because white people were still they still pretty much are. It seems like if you follow the media coverage, they're kind of afraid of people of color, which is fucking unfortunate. But if you weren't listening to like urban contemporary radio, you probably missed out on how good Parade was. But if you saw Pretty Woman, like any white girl I was around from 87 to 98, everybody knows Kiss because Julia Roberts sings it in the tub. Fuck that movie, but Parade's a goddamn great album. And Under a Cherry Moon is actually an underrated movie, in my opinion. I don't think it's great. It's not as good as Purple Rain. And it's definitely better than Graffiti Bridge, but that's a different argument for a different time. But Parade is a phenomenal album, and you should listen to it. Number 8 is probably Prince's most artistic outing, we can call it. It's Love Sexy. The man is naked on the album cover. It is one track, and it goes for the entire length of the album. That's always a tricky idea. Not everybody can be, Godspeed You Black Emperor, or like Sleep, or any jazz artist. But Prince played around with this idea. I think he had probably had it in his head for a while, but like any artist, he probably wanted to make sure he wasn't just playing the same stuff for the entire length of an album. And I think it's one of those things that if you don't have to put it on and like sit there and stare at your audio device and really dig into it. But it's kind of like listening to jazz, where maybe you're doing something else. Not necessarily like completely ignoring the music, but there will always be that moment in a jazz song where the artist sort of pulls you and you're like, huh, what's that? And Love Sexy has a few of those, and I still like listening to it. I still think it's worthwhile and worth recommending to somebody. But I definitely am not dumb enough to think that there aren't other places you were going in this man's catalog first. Number 7 is the Love Symbol album. This is the symbol that he would eventually change his name to because he felt like a slave to Warner Brothers. Not really going to comment much, but that was just how that happened. This is actually the first full Prince album I ever listened to. And the reason I listened to it is because I had friends in high school that were just enamored by the song 7, which was contagious, and it eventually enamored me. And then I'm like, they just had like the single that had a bunch of different remixes on it, and it was shaky at best. But I ended up digging in and saying, you know what, I'm just going to buy the album. I work at Best Buy. I get a great discount. Let's do this. And yeah, that's a motherfucker of an album. In fact, it includes the song "Sexy Motherfucker" or "Sexy MF" as it's listed on the back of the CD, because white people scared, I guess. I don't know. But there, it's kind of. I mean, it's. I feel pejorative in saying it's more Prince, but it is, but it's that standard that he has, it's his style, it's his world, and he balances sex and religion and love and just pensiveness, and just trying to. He'll use it. He'll do it within songs, but it's just sometimes he wants to say something. Sometimes he wants to say something about whatever, and then there are other times where he just wants to go, "My name is Prince and I'm funky," and it's a solid album. You should really listen to it. I wrote a list, and I wrote Parade twice. So Parade is number 6 again. So see number 9, and I'm going to actually look real quick. Just see. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna change number 9. I'll leave Parade at 6 because I made a mistake, and I'll actually throw in Around the World in a Day at number 9, because Around the World in a Day is actually a pretty good pop psych album, despite it having all of the trappings that Prince has. And I say trappings like it's a bad thing. There's nothing trapping you into Prince's career. It's just phenomenal music. It has, Raspberry Beret on it. If you don't like Raspberry Beret, we can't be friends. That's just it, because Raspberry Beret is one of those really happy songs that I don't think Prince would really touch on something that super happy until he released Musicology and that song Cinnamon Girl. Cinnamon Girl is a friggin' timeless pop song, as is Raspberry Beret. So Around the World in a Day at number 9, Parade, we're moving you forward to number 6 for those of you keeping score at home. Number 5, Diamonds and Pearls. This is kind of an outlier in Prince's career because this is the first time, while hip hop had been sort of on the ascendancy in music from the mid to late 80s and into the 90s, this was the time where he sort of embraced it. There's a lot of rapping on this album. And while as a hip hop fan, I don't think the rapping is it's not Rakim, it's not Big Daddy Kane, it's not KRS-One, it's not what you would hear out of like New York or LA. It's not super socially conscious in my opinion. But the fact that Prince said, okay, I noticed this, I mean, I'm paying attention. And I think he incorporated that into his music. Now he does have a couple of points where he does rap. Like he raps, he sort of speaks the lyrics to get off. And there's some, it feels very hip hop-ish, but he's not actually, setting up in a b-boy stance and trying to flow. And I think that's just sort of him going, I know what I do and I know what I do well. And I'll leave that to somebody else. I don't remember the MC's name that he has predominantly featured on this album, but I also don't think I'm not 100% certain that person went on to do anything much more. But it's fine. On Diamonds and Pearls, you get Off, you get Cream, you get the title track, Diamonds and Pearls, which is a really good ballad. You get probably the second strongest post Purple Rain album that Prince put out, and it's phenomenal. It's a really good listen, and I've been digesting this stuff basically since Sunday, and there have been a few that I've listened to twice, and Diamonds and Pearls is one of those, and it's there. It gets dirty, it gets funky, but it balances that with like pop mastery and beauty at times in a way that you almost don't expect. And I've heard the album plenty of times, and I still don't expect it a lot of the time. And I think that's cool about Prince. Number 4 is his second album for me. If only because I Want to Be Your Lover is such a good song. I remember when I worked at Tower Records, there was a supervisor named Alexis, and it seemed like whenever she was working, she manipulated the music when she wasn't supposed to. And she always put on the best of Prince. And it always, I knew it was an Alexis shift because you'd hear the opening to I Want to Be Your Lover. I was like, yep, no matter what sort of bullshit happens tonight, this is going to be a good shift. And the rest of the album is actually really good too. Again, it's sort of like the blueprint for what he would do in music and how he would sort of create the aura that he became, and how he would influence. He probably had, like, you could talk about Thriller being great and influential, but I think Prince probably had more influence on the 80s than Michael Jackson did. And that's saying something, because Michael Jackson was very inescapable throughout that decade. Number 3, I know you do, and I know I do. Whenever I hear 1999, that's exactly how I want to party. I still want to party like it's 1999, almost 20 years after 1999, which was actually 27 years after 1999 came out. So that's a lot of math. I won't really burden you with it because the math doesn't really mean much here. But I think this album is actually a leap in Prince's career because you had you had you had a pop hit in 1990 in the title track 1999, of course. You also had a pop hit in Little Red Corvette that was also pretty dirty, about sex and one night stands, and the woman sort of taking control rather than the dude, which is kind of an interesting sort of turnaround, considering the 80s was a very machismo driven decade. You also get dance music, sex, romance, and delirious, and let's pretend we're married, which is a driving little synth. Which is, well, it's not little; it's like 8 minutes long, but it's a driving synth funk. I don't want to say epic because it's not. Epic doesn't really say it right, but it's a driving synth funk groove that gets almost dirtier than Little Red Corvette, because if you're free for a couple of hours, and if you're not busy for the next 7 years, let's pretend we're married. We'll go all night. That's the chorus. And then there's when everything breaks and there's a little bit of a bridge, Prince actually says, "I want to fuck the taste out of your mouth." Now, in 1982, that's probably a weird thing to hear on the radio, and I could see. Well, I doubt you heard that on the radio, but if a parent walked into their kid's room and that's what they heard, they'd probably be like, "Listen here, child, we need to have a talk." I had that talk, and that was weird, but I still listen to that album because that album's really goddamn good. Number 2, Purple Rain. Purple Rain. Purple, actually, you know what? I should have done this. Here's 1999 because it's my third favorite. And then second is definitely this guy, because this is a beautiful album. It's fun, it's funky, it's from start to back. There's virtually no skippable songs. The singles from this all did really, really well. I think all 4 singles were number 1. The single for "I Would Die for You" actually has one of the best Christmas songs in history on its B-side. And that's called "Another Lonely Christmas," where everything in Purple Rain, except for like the closing title track, is sort of like a burst of energy to a degree. "Another Lonely Christmas" is sort of the absolute opposite of that, where he's down and sad and dealing with stuff. There's some mourning in there, and I'm not really going to go into that. You should check my list of great Christmas music, because I talk about it a lot. However, Purple Rain, if you've not listened to it, do yourself a favor. That is probably one of the albums. That is probably one of the 100 best albums made since the inception of rock and roll. And I say that because A, this is a rock album, regardless. B, the standard of quality consistent in this album is masterful. And this is the album that everybody talks about with regard to Prince, and it's pretty much true. It's like an objective fact at this point. It's probably his best. It's not my favorite, because my favorite is actually "Sign of the Times." Now, "Sign of the Times" is actually kind of a difficult album to really get into. It's not like arty or obtuse or trying to go over your head or really trying to be all hoity-toity about things, but it's difficult because it came out in like 87, 88. I think 87. And like the opener, the title track is talking about the drug epidemic, but it's also Prince. It's also a Prince song at the same time. So, a lot of people A lot of people nowadays, a lot of people even then didn't want politics in their pop music because why are they preaching? Which I don't even think he was. I think he was just sort of saying this is sort of a thing. Maybe we should look at it. And and I like the fact that he never said, this is how you do it right. This is what you're supposed to do. He doesn't really get preachy. He does it in a very eloquently observatory way. Also, I think probably my favorite one of his super religious songs, The Cross, which I always find it fascinating that he plays with the dichotomy of sex and religion really well on his albums. I think there's almost always a reference to God on an album, almost as, and I mean, it's not near as much as he references sex because frankly, that's just not as fun. But I think Cross here fits really well, and mainly because the entire album is almost like, it's almost like if you've ever heard the album The Who Sell Out, where it's kind of a concept album, but it's not like a story. The concept behind The Who Sell Out is it's like turning on the radio in the days of yore, where there would be ads in between the songs that they made up, which was cool. But like Sign of the Times is kind of like that, where it's just sort of like, this is sort of this is when I look at the world around me, this is what I see. And it starts out with crack epidemics, and then you have people having one night stands and cheating on their wives, where he has the song I'll Never Take the Place of Your Man on this, where he's like, I'm qualified for a one night stand, but I'm not here to take the place of your man. That's not what I do. He also had You Got the Look. The 80s was a highly fashion-driven decade. Even the most casual observer can I don't really think that's what, You Got the Look is about, but I think if you just sort of examine it in sort of the tapestry that the mid to late 80s were, I think Sign of the Times really fits. And I mean, even if you look at like the album cover, like it's clear, like they have, he's down here out of focus, and there's almost a very symbol. It's very symbolic of just sort of what the idea behind this album, and it's just a tapestry of things that were probably going on in his head because of what he had seen at the time. Without being super socially conscious. It doesn't get as socially conscious as the opening song, but it's a masterpiece of an album. It's a double LP. I think even the CD was 2 CDs, just to sort of keep that idea in mind. And it's still my favorite. It was my favorite when I actually finally started to get through it a lot. But it is an album that I will recommend of his probably till my dying day, and you should check it out. Also, that something else that hit streaming services it hit streaming service yesterday. It hit the 13th. If you watch Hulu, if you watch things on Hulu, you can now watch the entire run of The Golden Girls. You can watch Dorothy, Rose, Blanche, and Sophia get into all their little shenanigans. And I don't care how weird it sounds, I love that show. That is actually what I'm going to spend the rest of my Valentine's Day doing. I'm going to drink the last 4 of these that I have, and I'm going to watch those 4 old women, and I'm going to laugh. Because, frankly, the world is giving us a lot of reasons to be sad or angry or confused. And I don't feel like being sadistic and playing Neo tonight, because Neo will just make me angry. But I love that game. And so yeah, I'm gonna watch The Golden Girls, because frankly, I feel like it'll be a lot more fun. So with that, check me out. NGR Radio, the most recent episode that comes out. I believe it comes out the 20th. Actually has my co-host from the Platinum Achievement podcast on it. Chris Haar joins us from Lebanon. And we had a good time. We did get 20 questions. Corey didn't stump me again. But check me out there every Monday. I'm the goofy half of that. Corey is my better half. And yeah, we've got stuff coming. I'm still working on some pieces because I've been having a bit of writer's block, and of course tonight I'm going to get inebriated and watch the Golden Girls. Sorry, Corey. But look for me there, ngrradio.com now. Yeah, that happened. NGR is being broken out into its own YouTube channel as well. So yeah, I mean, nothing new, just new place, just us. So it's NGR. It's, you know what it is. You watch. I hope. If not, like, share, subscribe. Interact with us. If you think we're saying something wrong, you want to correct us, please do. We'll have a conversation. Heck, if you want to come on the show, you got a webcam, you want to come on the show, you want to talk to Corey and I about whatever, let us know. We're this club ain't exclusive. We welcome everybody. So with that, I will say this. Enjoy your Valentine's Day. Happy Taco Tuesday, because that's what I did for lunch. And banana and out.